Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Shruti Smriti Puranana Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharya Keshavam Badarayana Sutra Bhashya Kritav Vande Bhagavantav Punah Punah. Vaiseshikas say that the body is separate, consciousness is separate, and there is a combination of both of them. This is what the Vaiseshikas say. Whereas Vedanta says Deha is Adhyasa, embodiment is Adhyasa. Adhyasa is different from combination. Sanyoga. Sanyoga is different from Adhyasa. Sanyoga is an assemblage of things, whereas Adhyasa is superimposition. न अनित्यत्वात् न अनित्यत्वात् अनित्यत्व परार्थत्व प्रसंगात. Bhagavan says what Vaiseshikas say is wrong. Why? Because any assemblage is meant for a conscious being, and therefore every assemblage is non-eternal, and it is meant for a conscious being. It's not, no inert thing is for itself. Every inert thing is for a conscious being, and therefore the body and the conscious being cannot be combined together. Samvadatvat pararthatvam anityatvam cha vamshastambhadivat. Like even bamboos and pillars are, are, are combined to make a house, and the house is not for itself. The house is for a conscious being like you to exist, to live in. And therefore a house is meant for any assemblage. A car is an assemblage. An assemblage is meant for the one who is not a part of the assemblage. And therefore conscious being is not a part of the body, is not a part of the body. But then why does one feel that one is a part of the body? That is a notion, please. That is non-understanding. One feels consciousness can never be confined to a form. All forms are confined to consciousness. Like waves are confined to water. Water is not confined to the waves. Is not confined in the wave. Is not located inside the wave. All waves are located in water. In the same manner, all forms are located in consciousness. Consciousness is not located in any form. Therefore, the notion that I am the body is non-eternal, and it is a part of assemblage. And in the deep sleep state, it has laya. The truth has no laya, and anything that has laya is non-eternal, is false, is anityam, and asatvam is non-existent. Anything that has laya can be disproved. Anything that has laya can be false, can be wrong, can be false, can be falsified, can be disproved, and therefore अनित्यत्व परार्थत्व प्रसंग संहतत्वात् परार्थत्वम अनित्यत्वम च वंशस्तंभादिवत. Vamshastambhadivat means like even the vamsha means bamboos, stambha means like pillars. How they are connected. That house is an assemblage of things. It is a many things put together, and many things put together is called an assemblage. And when in an assemblage, the body is an assemblage of things. It is not indivisible. It is a divisible. Anything that is divisible is assemblage. And matter is divisible, and therefore it is an assemblage of things. Kincha yastu paraihi de paraihi. Paraihi means by the others, like the Vaiseshikas. Dehena samhataha parikalpitaha atma. Atma is, if Atma is imagined by the Vaiseshikas as a part of the assemblage, if it were a part of the assemblage, then an assemblage will have another self which is not a part of the self. We are talking about that self which is not a part of the assemblage. You are talking about the self which is a part of the assemblage. And when the part of the assemblage, that I am a part of the assemblage is a notion, is not a fact, is not actual. It's notional self, it's not the actuality. That it is snake is notional, and that it is rope is actual. Therefore, the kalpita, the imagined self, the kalpita, the imagined self, the adhyaropita self is something that is looked upon as a part of the assemblage. Anything that is looked upon as a part of the assemblage cannot know the assemblage. You have to be separate from the assemblage in order to know the assemblage. In order to experience the assemblage, you have to be separate from the assemblage. In order to experience the body, you have to be separate from the body. If you are not separate from the body, if you are a part of the assemblage of the body, then you cannot know the body. If you can know the body, that means you are separate. And the body is not for itself. The body is meant for a conscious being. And that conscious being is not a part of the body. If he is not a part of the body, then he is ekameva dvitiyam, it is non-eternal. He is eternal, not non-eternal, it is eternal. And if it is eternal, then it is ekameva dvitiyam, it is non-dual self. Like in Sushupti, then the notion that I am the body goes away, and the individuality, the sense of individuality goes away, and what remains is only the self that is non-dual. Tena asamhatah paraha anyah nityah siddhah tavat. It means here we should take the self that is, if we think that the self also is a part of the assemblage, then we are not talking about that self which is a part of the assemblage. We are talking about the eternal self which is not a part of the assemblage. Which is not a part of the assemblage is that is paraha, that is paramatma, that is the non-dual self. The non-dual self is not a part of the assemblage. Tasya asamhatasya. Now the disciple asks a question. Tasya asamhatasya dehe dehamatatya adhyaropitattvena asatva anityattvadi dosha prasango bhavati. Meaning, here he says that if the non-dual self is, if it is imposed, if it is taken for, if it becomes dehamatra, then as non-dual self it becomes non-existent. If it becomes non-existent, then it becomes asatva, it is non-existent, anityattvadi dosh prasanga, and it is non-eternal, and it is non-eternal, it is non-eternal, and it is non-existent. Tatra niratmakaha dehaha iti vainashika paksha prapti doshaha syat. Vainashika paksha, the Vainashika paksha, Vainashikas means the nihilists. The nihilists always say, those who say that the Atma is without any separate self, the body is without any separate self. The body has no self. The body itself is conscious, and the consciousness is indeed a part of the body. Consciousness being a part of the body, consciousness is not separate from the body. In this manner, the Vainashikas say. The Vainashikas say, the nihilists say, that the body becomes niratmaka, niratma, nairatmikavadaha. Nairatmikavadaha means the things they don't have any self at all. They don't have any source at all. The things exist by themselves. The things don't exist because of the source. The body also exists because of the source. For that, the teacher says, "Na, you are wrong. Swataha eva atmana akashasya eva asamhatatva abhyupagamat." We accept that just as space, everything is in space. It's not qualified by anything, and yet everything is in space. The earth is in space, but it doesn't qualify the space. The Prithvi, the water is in space, but it's not. It doesn't qualify the space. The fire is in the space. They are not. They are not nirakasha. सर्वेण असंहतः सः च आत्मा इति न निरात्मको देहादिः सर्वः स्यात्. Even though everything is Atma is free from Atma is free from Atma is not qualified by anything. Atma is not connected to anything. Is not qualified by anything. Asamhatah Atma. Nacha Atma Sacha Atma. Na Niratmakah Dehadhi Sarvasya. That doesn't mean just as space is not qualified by the other four elements, and yet they are all in space. Similarly, the whole world doesn't qualify the self, and yet the whole world is within the self. The whole world has the self, as the self is has the self as its own self, as its own existence. Yatha cha akasham sarvena asamhatamiti. It's not connected to the Prithvi, it's not connected to the water, it's not connected to the fire, it's not connected to the air, and still they're all present in the space. Asamhata sarvam na nirakasham bhavati. They are not without space. They are all exist, they are all located in space, but yet they don't qualify space. Similarly, the objects don't qualify the self, and yet they are all within the self. तस्मान् न वैनाशिक पक्ष प्राप्ति दोषः स्यात्. Tasmat na, and therefore there is no vainashik paksha, that the objects exist without the source. This paksha doesn't exist at all. This paksha is not there. The source is the self, the material cause. The self of all the objects is the self, is consciousness. They're all within consciousness, just as the water, the waves are not without water. Without being water, they cannot be a wave. Water can be without being a wave, but wave cannot be without being water. The objects cannot be without being one with consciousness, and consciousness can be without being an object. And they are all illumined by in the light of consciousness. Yat punuruktam dehasya dehasya अत्यंत असत्वे प्रत्यक्षादि विरोधः स्यात् इति. If deha is adhyaropana, then it is non-existent. It is totally non-existent. The whole world is the whole sarvam khalvidam brahma. The whole world is Brahman. As Brahman it exists, the world as world doesn't exist. And they have sambandha. They have pratyakshadi virodha syaditi. And this the Siddhanta says, hey Purvapakshi, you said that it is pratyakshadi virodha. It is something that is against perception. But the perception doesn't say that everything, the body and the world is in consciousness, like Kunde Badaram. Like Kunde Badaram means प्रत्यक्षाद विहात्मने देहस्य सत्वानुपलब्धेः. We don't see the objects being within consciousness. They always exist. They always are looked upon as other than consciousness. Nahi atmane kunde badaram. Kunde means in a pot. Badaram means berries. The berries don't exist just as the berries exist in a pot, or the milk exists in the pot. Shire sarpihi, or we say in the milk, the sarpihi, the butter exists in the milk. Tile tailam, or in the sesamum, tailam means the oil exists. We see it. In that manner, the world is not seen within consciousness. Bhittau chitrameva. In the bhitti means the wall. Chitrameva means like a painting. A painting is seen on the wall, but the world is not seen within the consciousness. Pratyakshadabhi deha upalabhyate. Pratyakshadabhi through sense perception. It's not perceived. Pratyakshadabhi, it's not perceived as though that it is present. The world is present in consciousness. The world is not present in consciousness. The world is present in consciousness without qualifying it. Whereas the Purvapakshis think, the Vaiseshikas think that the world exists without consciousness, without any source, without any material cause. Tasma pratyakshad virodha. Therefore, katham tarhi pratyakshadi aprasiddhatmani deha adhyaropana. Deham cha atma aropana. The disciple asks a question, then how is it that the what is not evident through perception, if the body is not evident through perception and consciousness is not evident in perception, then how are they, the non-evident things, how can they be superimposed upon each other? You can't have a thought about the non-evident. You can have only thought about the evident. If they are not, to be evident means to be evident through perception. To be evident through perception. And if they are not evident through perception, they are non-existent. If they are non-existent, then how can you impose the body on the self or the self on the body? Nayam doshaha. For that, the Siddhanta says this is no big problem. Nayam doshaha. Swabhava prasiddhatvat atmanaha. Atma is self-existent eternally. It is always existent. It's not sometimes it is evident, it is always evident. Nahi kadachit katva siddhaveva adhyaropana. Na nitya siddhav. It's not something that is kadachit. Kadachit means occasionally. What is evident occasionally, only in that there can be an adhyasa, not in the eternally evident self. Not in the eternally evident self. In this manner, there is no niyama, na nitya siddha iti niyantum na shakyam. Because the Vaiseshikas always believe that Akasha is nitya siddham. It is always present. But then, in that always present self in space, also you have adhyasa, like the roof you impose upon the self and the space, and the horizon you impose on the space, and the dust also you impose on the space, on the space. In the same manner, in the eternally existent self also, in the eternally existent self also, there can be an imposition upon, there can be an imposition of the body, etc. Akasha talamala adi adhyaropana darshana. In Akasha, Vaiseshikas always believe Akasha as eternally present. It is always Nitya Siddham, they say. If there can be Talamal and the roof, etc., imposed on the eternally existent space, in the same manner, the self also is eternally existent. In that also there can be imposition of the body, etc. There is no roof. There is no roof on the and in the space, but then you see the roof in the space. There is no horizon in the space, but yet you see a horizon in the space. In the same manner, there is no body in the self, and yet you see the body embodiment in the self. The embodiment is non-existent in the self. The self is not qualified by the embodiment, because the self is something, consciousness is something that is not qualifiable, not confinable by any form. It is comprehensive of all forms. It is Kritsnaha, just as the water is comprehensive of all bubbles and all waves. In the same manner, the consciousness is also comprehensive of all the forms. And it looks as though it is confined to the form. That is due to I don't see clearly, I don't see very closely the distinction between the enclosure and the enclosed, the comprehensive and the comprehended. I don't see the distinction, and therefore Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha is recommended by the Shankaracharya, all the Acharyas. Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha means the discerning between the self and the form. The self is not confined to the form. The self is comprehensive of all the forms. A form cannot be confined. A form cannot be the material for consciousness. Consciousness is something that is independent of the forms. Like water is independent of the wave, but wave is not independent of water. अनित्यसद् इति नियन्तुं न शक्यम् आकाशतलमलादि अध्यारोपणदर्शनात् किं भगवान् देहात्मनोः इतरेतर अध्यारोपण देहादि संघातकृता अथवा आत्मकृता इति. Bhagavan is mistake made, is adhyaropana is done, is adhyasa done by Atma or by the body or by the self. What is it that creates adhyasa? Adhyasa is not created, adhyasa is anadi. In fact, Bhagavan doesn't say it, but I am saying it. Adhyasa is anadi. Adhyasa is not created by anybody. It's not done. Adhyasa is anadi. It is timeless. And therefore, Guru Ruvacha, Guru says, the teacher says, Yadi dehad sangat krita, yadi va atma krita, kim tatra syat. What is there? What do you get out of it? Whether it is done by the adhyasa, atma, or by the body, what is there? What is there? If it be made by the one or the other. The teacher said, does it matter? Does it matter? Does it matter at all? Whether Atma does it or the body does it matter? Does it matter? What does it matter to you? In by saying, for that, in what way are you affected by it? For this, the Sishyas Ityuktaha Sishyaha, the student says, Yadi aham dehad sangat matraha. If I am a part of the assemblage, then I being insentient. Tataha mama अचेतनत्वात् परार्थत्वमिति न मत्कृत देहात्मनोः इतरेतर अध्यारोपण. If I am a part of the assemblage, then I become inert. As inert thing, then I cannot be done any adhyaropana. I cannot begin any adhyasa. I cannot think, because adhyasa is always in the form of a thought, and I cannot entertain any thought. If I am a part of the assemblage, I cannot entertain a thought, and I am always meant for somebody else. And therefore, yadi aham atma, if I am other than assemblage, paraha, anyaha, if I am if I am unqualified by the body, then sanghatat chitimatvat, then I being consciousness, स्वार्थः इति मया एव चितिमता आत्मने अध्यारोपणः क्रियते. Then in that case, if the conscious being alone, I as the conscious being alone has done this adhyaropana. For that the teacher says, Sarva anartha bijabhuta, this Sarva anartha bijabhuta, that which gives me endless sorrow, this adhyasa has been done by me, because if I am a part of the assembly, I become inert. Then I have not done. If I am different from the assembly, then I am a conscious being. As a conscious being, I must have done adhyasa. For this, the teacher says, Ityuktaha Guru Ruvacha. In that, then the Guru says, the teacher says, Anartha Bijabhuta Chet. If it gives you endless sorrow, then Mithya Adhyaropana Adhyaropanam Janishe Ma Karshihi Tarihi. If it gives you endless sorrow, then don't do any adhyasa. Then don't do any adhyasa. If you are not a part of the assembly, if you are separate from the assembly, if you think you have done any conscious being, then don't do any adhyasa. This is also, I am saying, this answer is okay. This answer is correct, but then I can also give another answer. Adhyasa is anadi. It is not done by anybody. It's neither started by the conscious being, nor started by the inert thing, body. Neither it is done by the body. Like there is no will behind adhyasa. If there is no will behind adhyasa, no mistake is made by willfully, no mistake is made by will. There is no will behind any mistake, any misconception. Every misconception is made independent of the will, and therefore every misconception is will free. But this dehadi adhyasa is anadi, it is timeless, because you are born with time, you are not born in time. The body is seen, that your embodiment is seen along with time. It is concomitant with time. It is not located in time. Embodiment is not located in time, and therefore it is anadi. And therefore, naiva bhagavan shaknomi na kartum. I cannot stop this adhyasa, even though it is something that is something I should not be doing it. Even though I feel I must have done it, because I am not a part of the assemblage. As not a part of the assemblage, I am a conscious being. As a conscious being, I must have done. But if you say, don't do it, I am not able to stop it. Adhyasa. Naiva Bhagavan Shaknomi na kartum. It's not possible for me not to do, not to experience any sorrow. Anyan kenchit prayuktoham. I am not, I am being controlled by someone else. Na swatantrahayate. I have no independence. I have no choice. I cannot avoid sorrow. I cannot avoid unhappiness. I cannot avoid the thoughts that give me unhappiness. And therefore, there is something else that's controlling me. I am not swatantra. I am not an independent individual. As an individual, I feel I am dependent upon someone else. And therefore, I cannot stop this adhyasa. And the more of it we will see in the next class. Thank you very much. I'm getting better. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnas Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.